What's up, bosses? Welcome to About Her Business, the podcast where we leave all the gossip at the door and get straight down to business. I'm your host, Jonte, and today I have another fellow podcaster in the room, the host of the Mama Making podcast, Miss Jessica Lamb. Now, Miss Lamb's podcast is centered on moms making impact in their communities through their work and in everyday spaces that shape the world. She's also the founder of The Creative, a boutique digital marketing company focused on sharing real stories on small business owners, and we're putting her in the hot seat today on what she means business. So, ladies, grab those cups and those notepads and let's get down to it. The meeting is now in session. Welcome, Miss Lamb.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. You ready to get into it?
I'm ready.
Let's go. So, take us back to the beginning. What was happening in your life when entrepreneurship first became a real option for you?
Yeah, so I never really planned to be an entrepreneur. I knew I had an entrepreneurial spirit and knew that one day I wanted to work for myself, but I didn't really have any plans for it. So I have a background in nonprofit fundraising and transitioned from that to project management in the behavioral health space. I worked for a large healthcare system. I was unexpectedly laid off from my position. My whole team was actually let go. So I was faced with a layoff, and luckily, I had a great severance and a great partner that was able to pick up the slack there. But I was already doing a little bit of freelance work, doing digital marketing for people's events or friends or whoever. And I had decided, okay, let me lean into this a little bit. My son was just a year old at the time. So I took a little time to be home with my son and then really started getting into the freelance part of things. And I said, okay, let me legitimize this a little bit. Let me get an LLC. Let me get a little organized. And once I decided to make that shift from freelance to a business, it really took off. All of my clients so far have been word of mouth. It was truly a build it and they will come beginning for me.
Wow. And that's how a lot of people, especially nowadays, end up in entrepreneurship through unfortunate circumstances. So you've actually built two amazing companies yourself. So let's talk about one of them right now, which is the Mama Making Podcast. What gap did you see that made you say this needs to exist?
Yeah, so for me, the starting of the podcast was purely selfish and self-focused, and that I started the podcast before I had kids. And it was originally called the Baby Making Podcast. And I just had so many nosy questions to ask about building a family, pregnancy, delivery, being a parent, and not everybody is willing to kind of spill the tea on their delivery story or whatever it is. So I decided, hey, I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to ask my questions, and it all blossomed from there. Obviously, it shifted and shaped differently after I had my own son in 2022 and has just kind of grown from there. I have found that there's so many women have so many questions and don't really know where to turn to. There's either a wealth of information or not enough information based on their circumstance. So I have loved being able to kind of shift and change with the podcast as I grow as a person.
And I absolutely love that because before becoming a mother, I too wanted to have that insight on mother's perspective. So I kind of started a Facebook debate and it totally went left. But I was trying to see the opinions of mothers and how mothers function because there's really not a one size fit all when it comes to motherhood. And as you said, everything could be different from people. And sometimes there aren't enough resources out there for a particular situation. So I'm also happy that you brought that up as well. And motherhood is one of those things that we women we take as an honor because our kids are our lives. But being entrepreneurs, it can also get kind of stressful. So let's talk about that for a second. How did your identity shift when you stepped into both of these roles at the same time?
It was such a journey for me. I had so much imposter syndrome going into both motherhood and entrepreneurship. I knew I always wanted to be a mom, and it wasn't until I became pregnant, I started prepping, doing all the things, and the day my birth got closer, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. And I really had to work through believing in myself that I had the given tools to be a mom and build a connection and nurture my baby. I had so much overwhelm about becoming a mom and doing it right and just had to really dig deep and realize that everything I needed was already within myself. And it was almost exactly the same with entrepreneurship, and that I was like, I'm not a business person. I didn't go to school for business. I didn't even go to school for marketing, but I had so much learned experience from the decades of nonprofit work I did, the freelance work I did, and I really had to dig deep and realize that I deserved to be in the room. And although I didn't think the room was for me, I created my own room and have created my own ecosystem that works for me and builds on my expertise and can pushes my boundaries a little bit still. So it was interesting how those both unfolded in the same way.
I absolutely love how you put that, because when it comes down to entrepreneurship, we don't necessarily have the degrees and all the certifications to start the business, but going through life and just having different positions when you're working those 9 to 5s, it gives you those skills that you need to start a business. And a lot of people don't use those skills because it's like, I need the degree to get this and that and the other. But really, you have those skills to literally start your business with what you know and just continue to grow, which is another thing that you brought up and I absolutely love. You're going to continue to grow as an entrepreneur, just like you're going to continue to grow as a mother. If you think you got patience, have a baby. It's going to definitely test you, and you're going to have to continue building on that patience every single day. Now, let's talk about the Collabs Creative. You focus on telling real stories for small business owners. What does real mean to you in marketing, in the marketing world, that often pushes perfection?
That's a great question. I think a lot of business owners think like what I should be doing or what I'm seeing out there that my competitors are doing or that the Instagram page I follow and love is doing. And I think for me, what is real is authenticity. I think people can see right through your trendy social media posts that aren't connecting for whatever reason. I think people really connect with the story of your business, who you are, why you started this business, why you chose the services that you chose, and how you show up in the world. I think people can see right through if you're authentic or not. And so, one of my big focuses with Collabs Creative is being authentic. I can only show up authentically with my clients and be who I am. And I want to help more business owners do that as well.
Absolutely. And I love that because back before COVID hit, a lot of social media was acting and performative, and things have totally shifted to a more storytelling and authentic ways of getting people to actually stay engaged in your content. Because, and I'm actually happy it's shifted to that, because I'm not a person that can get on there and just be stiff and talk like this and move like that. I'm a person that likes to be goofy. I stutter and all those types of things. My mind goes blank. And so I'm actually really happy that you brought up that conversation, because I absolutely love the way that social media is shifting right now, because it's starting to give a lot more people inspiration. It's starting to give people a lot more confidence to step out there themselves. And that's what it's really about, y'all. It's about inspiring the next person, helping the next person, whether if it's through your story or just being an inspiration to people, just being a light. So that's a great point there, Jessica.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, I think something for me that was challenging, again, with that like imposter syndrome, I am a guest-based podcast. So I have guest experts on, I have people sharing their lived experience and stories, and I have always taken a back seat. I'm from the beginning, I've always said, this isn't about me. I want to know more about other people. But I think what draws people to you and your business or your podcast or your product is that authenticity piece. People are coming for you and they trust you or they trust your expertise or your instinct. And that's something I had to learn over. I mean, I've been podcasting for 5 years and just now I'm like, oh, maybe I'll do a couple solo episodes. And I think that once we get past that, like, what are people going to think? I think that we can get over that hump of not thinking we're the expert or thinking someone else knows better. And I think at the end of the day, people are sold on you and your story, how you got involved in this. And there's so many other people in the world that are doing what you do. And there's more than enough clients to go around or more than enough podcast guests. And people are choosing you because of your story. And so I think when we show up on social media or show up in our marketing, whatever that might look like, authenticity is always going to win.
Absolutely. And I love that you brought up how you shifted in the podcast area, because I too had that issue. I wanted to make it all about my guests, and it kind of became very scripted, and I felt like I was having a disconnect even with my guests. And so I started giving commentary during my podcast, and it helps you relate to others. It helps your guests be more comfortable with telling their stories. And I just love how I have got pretty much gotten out of my own way and started engaging and relating to everybody that I have on my podcast. And it's a beautiful thing, because they literally is how your reputation is built as well, especially as a podcaster, and how you continue to get more guests. Because if you're sitting here and you're still and it's just like you're not actually engaging, it becomes actional, and we're building communities here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about some of the early decisions you made in building your brand that help you stay aligned with your voice, even when growth felt uncertain.
That's a great question. So for the podcast, I went through a couple brands and rebrands. And I think when I first started the podcast, I just created what I thought everybody wanted to see, like a fun, bubbly, light blue color and this cute scripty font. And I think as time went on, it didn't feel so much like me. And as I became a mom, I became more settled, more chill, a little bit more muted in that I wasn't going to show up in the same way, and I was going to be to the point. I was going to share what I wanted to share, say what I wanted to say. I think there's a little piece of motherhood and entrepreneurship that you just don't care about some things anymore, and you've got an abundance of time prior to children or prior to having a business. And when you have both of those things happening at the same time, your words need to be quick, efficient. You need to be sharing who you are quickly. And so when I came back to the podcast after having my son, I did a complete rebrand from this cute aqua blue color and white and fun and fresh to this really muted browns, tans, mid-century modern vibe, because that's what I was feeling. And so I think that once I made that shift of matching my authentic self and my brand for the podcast, I felt like people really started to understand who I was, and I felt like there was a little bit of growth in that time frame, that you could see that there was a mesh between the two. And for Collabs Creative, I built my brand with her former coworker who is now my creative director, but we built it together on the idea that we wanted to be like a calming and comfortable place for people to come to and they're like, hey, I need some help. And to feel like we're not the experts, we're not the people that you're coming to be like, this is what you need to do, this is how you're going to grow your business, this is how marketing should look for you. That it is collaborative, that you come in and you're like, hey, here are my challenges, we work with you where you're at, whatever that looks like. And so we wanted our brand to reflect that as well. So it's a sage green with a really calming white cream color. And I think that really sets a tone for showing that our brand isn't the focus, it's our clients' brands. And we want them to feel comfortable and calm to come to us and get the collaborative work together. And I think that coming authentically in that space as well brought a lot of unintended growth. Like I said in the beginning, I never planned on having a company. And I think starting with a brand that felt like me, that felt like who I was showing up in this space as, really helped me grow in those areas.
And you brought up was I had to meet myself where I was. And a lot of people are afraid of rebranding in those moments. So I'm so happy that you brought that up for our audience, because it's okay to sometimes rebrand, y'all. It's okay sometimes to change the colors of your logo and things like that. Because I mean, how can you meet your clients where they are if you're not already meeting yourself where you are? So that's a great point that you just brought up, Jessica. And I appreciate you for saying that, because that's something that I went through as well with my Healing Through Chaos podcast and changing the logos and working with that as well. But I knew I wanted to stay in the greens and golds because that's where I was at the time. And a lot of people are scared of that word rebrand because they think it's a failure, when in reality it can be literally a life changer and help you grow in the end.
Yeah, and it's just an alignment. I think, like you said, people get overwhelmed by changing their brand and what they look like, and people won't recognize me anymore. But I think it's just the opposite, that you're getting better aligned with who you are now. For example, I just did a rebrand for a friend who's a hairstylist and has had the same brand for 10 years. We just rebranded for her, and it's like a boho, like browns and pinks and orange, and it completely matches exactly who she is. Not that the other brand didn't, but she has changed so much in her life and in motherhood. And as a business owner, you should be changing and you should be looking and showing up differently. And I think when we do a rebrand, it can be overwhelming. Finding the right person to do it for you, I think, is key. But outside of that, I think we should be showing that we're changing and moving and creating differently than we were before.
Absolutely. And another great thing about it is when you get into that alignment, everything starts to flow. So let's talk about that for a second. How have you navigated inconsistency or burnout while building your podcast and businesses?
Oh, that's a good question. I think burnout can show up in a lot of different ways. I think for me, because of the way that I operate my podcast and that I do batch recording and I podcast weekly, and that comes with the editing and the social media and the show notes and all of the behind the scenes stuff, I think that gives me a lot of burnout and more than I realize. And I think what refills me is interviews like this, where I get to meet other women who are out there doing it, whatever their business is or their passion project. And I think for me, refocusing on the why I'm doing it is helpful. But then I also think something I've been really big on in building my business is doing it sustainably, both with the podcast and with my marketing business. And I keep saying I'm just going on vibes, and it sounds silly. There's way more to that. It is going with that authenticity and showing up as myself. It is making sure things are aligning, like my brand feels aligned with me, my services are aligned with what I feel like I can provide a good quality concept with. And another thing is intuition. And I think that the second I started to check in with myself and go with my gut when I was making business decisions, when I'm choosing what my podcast guests are, when I'm choosing my focus of a season, when I'm sending pitches to new sponsors, or in my business, when I'm choosing clients to add to my client list, I'm choosing contractors that I'm adding on, making sure, like doing that gut check first to say, am I really feeling this? Am I not? Is the vibe right between us when we're chatting? I think that has helped me from significant burnout because I'm doing what feels aligned, I'm doing what feels intuitive to me, and I'm not forcing myself to do anything. And I have found in a time and space when things are crazy busy, I'm married, we just bought a house last year, we have a 3-year-old, I have a business, I have a podcast, my husband has a business. So we are in the thick of it. And one thing that has stood out for me is it's just one subtle change that I've made, that I'm focusing first on, does this feel right? And then making decisions from there. I feel like that has changed everything.
And she brought up a great point as well because alignment means everything and community can mean everything too. And that's honestly another reason why I continue to keep going because, again, me podcasters like Jessica and other women as well who are podcasters, you see what they're going through. You get to ask those questions, you get to find out their stories or why they started it as well. And you have that sense of community around you. And I absolutely love how you explain that to our audience. So let's talk about women who struggle in their position to tell their story because that is a thing too out here. Should I tell my story and how much of it should I tell? How did you learn to own your own narrative without overexposing yourself?
Ooh, that is a learned experience. I think for me, I struggled in my early life with sharing too much and thinking that if I wasn't sharing everything, I was lying to my audience or lying to my friends or lying to my family and was holding on to something. So I had to share everything. And I think just as I got older, I just realized some things are meant to be held and some things are meant to share. And so I think it's another piece of going with your gut. What feels like it would bring you relief or joy or connection to share. For example, I didn't share my birth story with my son till he was 2 on the podcast. I have a podcast that's focused on women. The early years of it was like all about birth and deliveries and all the different things. And it took me 2 years to get to a point where I was like, okay, I'm ready to share this. And the reason was I had so much processing to do on my own about it. And I think that's where people get challenged with thinking, I need to share this. Everyone needs to know about this, but not taking the time to sit with your story and think, what things are painful? Why are they painful? What things are joyous about my story? And picking and choosing what things feel like they would bring value to you and to your audience. I think that can be really hard to sit with, but allowing yourself the time to be in your story and think this makes sense to share because it feels right for me, I think is huge. And when it comes to your business, I think it can be harmful and helpful to share your story. But I think at the core of it, like we were saying before, people are coming for you, and what makes you is your experiences. And I think when you show up to your audience or to your business or to your employees, whoever it might be, when you're showing up as yourself, that also comes with your story. So I'm a big proponent of sitting down and being like, okay, what feels good to share? What things am I like, no, I'm good to hold on to? And just going with your gut on that. And again, people are coming for you, they're coming for your story. And I really encourage people to dig deep and see what feels right to share. Maybe it's not right now, maybe it's 5 years from now, but I think it can be a process that's worthwhile to invest in.
Absolutely. And that was the perfect answer, if there are perfect answers out there, because I agree with that. I still have those moments of where should I share this or should I not? Because again, you have to find the purpose and why it is what you went through, because people are coming to hear your story and they're coming to see how you've overcome it or the things that you did to get through it. And if you haven't assessed those types of things, then you can easily come across as bitter or angry and things like that. So I definitely agree with everything that you just said. Now, let's talk about monetizing from a business standpoint. How are you monetizing your creativity right now? And what's actually working behind the scenes for you?
That's a great question. I am very much in the beginning stages of my business, and I freelanced for a while and it was a lot of hourly work or per project work. And the one thing that I have decided to implement almost off the jump is what on the back end I'm calling retainers. Everybody, whether they're coming to me for social media or they're just coming to me for one print item, they're never just going to need 1 month of social media or one business card or one flyer, whatever it might be. They're always going to need something else. And while they might sign on for one thing, your value of work is always going to show. And so, what I have been doing, if someone comes to me for a one off project, I'm happy to do it. We'll talk about it. We'll do a base rate as to what that looks like. But if I hear them saying, but down the road, I'd like to do XYZ, that's a almost like a warning bell to me to say this person is foreseeing needing more help. So what I will do is give them the options, the packages that I've put together for it's usually base rate. We don't really do hourly just because I feel like it's easier to give people here's what it costs us to do the work, and I feel like it makes it less transactional to have this is the package, this is what you're getting versus that hourly, almost like nickel and diming. I think some people see it as it's not. You should be paid your hourly rate, but that can be baked into your pay structure in your packages. But what I have found to be most successful, and I thinking in my head right now, all of my clients currently are on a retainer. So for us, it's a retainer. For our clients, it's pitched as an ongoing partnership. And it's dependent on what they need. So if it's someone who needs full scale marketing, for us, that means full social media. That means website updates and potential for redesigns. That's marketing strategy, figuring out how they can get into more communities or more clients coming in. That can mean more print material, regular print work needed. So they need everything from us. That's going to be that higher ticket price. So you're factoring in your time managing that project. You're factoring in any contractors that you need to have or staff that you need to complete that work. And then whatever other print material costs and things like that and overhead to make sure that is worthwhile for you. And then on the back end of that, you're not worrying about, okay, this month I have this many clients, this much hours. How much am I actually going to get paid this month? I think it makes it a lot easier for me, someone that is not a money person, to be able to say, okay, I have X amount of money coming in each month, and we don't really do contracts. We do month to month and quarterly. We'll talk to our people to be like, how are things feeling? How do they look? But if you're someone who's doing contracts, which is great to do, you're able to know exactly how much money is coming in till when, until you have to have this next conversation. Maybe it is continuing that partnership. Maybe it is continuing the partnership, but adjusting your pay structure because maybe it was a little more than you thought and they asked for a lot more. Or maybe it's just your services are requiring more. I hope that answers your question.
I know I have some marketers out there that are going to watch this episode and go, how should I set it up? And that you explained it perfectly. You're literally charging for your time, you're charging for your resources, you're charging for, in some cases, the knowledge. Because when it comes down to marketing, like you have to study platforms and niches and things like that to bring in the people for these companies. So, I mean, it really is time consuming. And I have a background in doing social media management for a while. And I just remember literally going and trying to study the algorithm of each platform at the time. And it was a headache. But it was also a part of how I was able to charge during the time as well. So I absolutely love how you broke that down for the audience on that marketing side. You actually open a lot of eyes to entrepreneurs who aren't in the marketing industry on exactly why these prices are set the way they are. Because I mean, y'all paying for time, resources, and intelligence, y'all.
Yeah, and I think to add on to that for the marketers in the room, I definitely struggled when I was a freelancer telling people I do everything. Just because you can and will do everything doesn't mean that needs to be on your services list. So for me, if you go to my website, you'll see we do social media, we do branding, and we do print marketing. Will we do blogs? Will we do a website redesign? Will we do promo items for your event? Yes, our list of expertise is long, but once you can get someone in with those services that you've got the back of your hand, getting them in and doing those things well will bring that extra work in, which if they're just coming from social media and they're like, hey, we have an event coming up, we need a banner created, can you help us do this? Yes, absolutely. I don't think this is going to be a one off. Why don't we move to that ongoing partnership so that we can keep this core of social media and then start to add on more things as you need us? And I think that it makes it so much easier to be able to be that go to resource because they trust you. They know that you're able to do these core services. You have the ability to add these things on. But I think it can be a really great segue without stretching yourself too thin. Because I think us women entrepreneurs can do it all and know that we can do it all. And sometimes we forget that saying no is an option. And so I know from experience, I have spread myself so thin because I know I can do the work, but let's get paid for it. Let's continue to prioritize our time, our expertise, our community connections with other contractors and white labeling work. I'm really big on making sure you can provide quality content if you're doing social media, quality work to your client, while also letting them know that there is an option to add on more.
And I hope y'all wrote that down because that is great advice. Because a lot of people go, I do this, and this. And by the time you done gave out that whole list, they go, well, I'm not interested, or they might say, well, I only want that service. But that's literally how I got into social media management. A lot of people was coming for website designs, but they also wanted that social media presence. So I'm so happy that you said that, because everybody do that. It's a script and it can become overwhelming to some people. And sometimes it may just be an add-on later. Let's talk about, because I want some advice from you as a fellow podcaster. For someone that is building a podcast or a platform today, what would you say matters more, strategy or being authentic? And how do you balance both of those?
I will always say authenticity comes first, with the caveat that I do think you need a little bit of strategy behind that authenticity. So I think when you're arriving at the idea of whether you're like, you have a podcast and you're like, well, I have a following, this is the stuff that we talk about, but it doesn't quite feel right. It's not hitting the way that I want to. Once you arrive at the idea of, I think I'm going to lean into authenticity, this is who I am, this is what I'm interested in, this is who my people are interested in as a speaker or guest, whatever it might be. There's obviously going to take a little strategy on the back end of figuring out logistics and timing. But I think once you're leading with that authenticity, the alignment, I think the strategy kind of comes with it. And the more you feel like, yes, this is exactly what I'm wanting, this feels right, you're going to start talking to more people saying, hey, what are you doing for strategy? What does strategy look like for you? And taking input and influence in research and putting together a strategy that works for you. Like for social media, right now, I post 3 days a week because it makes sense for me. When I have a collaboration, I'll post extra. When I have something exciting going on, I'll post extra. But for me, that's what's sustainable. 3 days a week is sustainable. I just hired on a social media person for the podcast and for Collabs Creative, and that's going to free up so much more time for me. And it's going to help me create strategy in other areas, whether it's like lead funnels or whatever it might be that makes sense and is aligned for me. I think that when you lean into authenticity and alignment, that strategy comes. It starts to feel like you just start going, and simply because it feels right. It feels right the way that you're going, that the strategy can come on the back end.
Absolutely. And again, another perfect answer, because as a person who's in the podcast game, you have to figure out how you're going to show up as your authentic self. And I promise you, the strategy it will come, because I didn't have a hook, I didn't have an intro, I didn't have any of that before I started. And it literally just came because I said I want to show up as myself. Now, again, we've been talking about your work with small business owners. What has been the biggest storytelling mistake you see entrepreneurs making when they're trying to grow?
That's a good question. I think it is, again, sharing too much, sharing things that aren't relevant to your audience. I think that, again, deciding how much and who to share it with is definitely a journey, like we talked about. And I think when you start sharing things and it's not measured and there isn't a plan for it, like you're just getting on TikTok doing a story time talking about yourself. I love the authenticity of that, but you're always going to turn people off. You're always going to find that people love what you're saying, they don't love what you're saying. So I think taking inventory, again, like we were talking before, what does my audience want? What will be valuable to them? What feels right for me to share? I think it all kind of circles back to that same thing.
Absolutely. And motherhood, because you see a lot of mothers out here who are telling their stories and things like that. The Housewives series, I like to call it, because you have a lot of women that are working from home now and showing you their everyday life. So let's talk about, how has motherhood specifically influenced the way you lead, make decisions, and show up as a CEO?
I think I make decisions a lot quicker. I think prior to being a mom, I would like mull a decision around in my mind for weeks at a time. Whereas now, I just don't have that mental space anymore. I've got a kitchen full of dishes, I've got a floor to vacuum, I have my son to pick up from school. So, like, I just don't have the time to sit and mull on decisions. And that's why I think going with your gut, again, makes it so much easier to lead your business and lead your team if you have one, lead your clients because you are sure of yourself. And in the beginning of the podcast and entrepreneurship, I wasn't sure of myself. And so I think once you're checking back in with yourself, I think it makes it a lot easier to quickly make decisions. It's an immediate, does this feel right? Yes or no? If no, it's a polite decline. If it's yes, all right, let's think about this. How is this going to work? But when it's in the beginning for me, it was like, well, I really like this person, or I really like what they're talking about, but I know the vibe seems off. I'm not sure. And I would think about a guest speaker for weeks, and I really didn't need to do that. I could just see it wasn't the right fit, politely decline, and keep it rolling. And I think that once I started to move past that, it made it so much easier to make decisions both as a business owner and as a mom. I do think being a mom is a little bit harder, and that I'm like, oh my God, am I ruining my kid forever because I made this quick decision or whatever it might be. But kids are resilient.
Absolutely. And that's another great answer because when you are a mother and an entrepreneur, it teaches you how to balance. And now I just don't have the time to sit there and procrastinate on it. I have to make a decision right then. So that is literally a great point because I, as a mother myself, going through the same thing and had to make those same type of changes as well. Now, again, we've been talking about pressures and motherhood can pressure you, being an entrepreneur can pressure you. And there's a lot of pressure towards entrepreneurs, especially right now towards scaling. So let's talk about that for a minute. How have you been able to define success for yourself in a way that feels sustainable for you?
This is a conversation I love to have. My first caveat to this conversation is always that my situation is not ever going to be the same as someone else's. So I am very lucky to be able to be in a position where I can choose how many clients I take on. I can choose to focus on building the quality of business and taking on the quality of clients because I don't have to worry about having a specific amount of money on my paycheck. And I think that's really important to caveat before all of it because not everyone has that option. And early in my life, I was never able to do that. I wasn't an entrepreneur before because of that. I needed a specific amount of money to get by and to live. And so for me, like I said, it was a side hustle, it was a freelance business to get to the point where I'm at now. I haven't focused at all on scaling, to be honest. It has been like things falling into my lap in terms of clients. So a lot of my clients are word of mouth, or I have connected with someone on social media and they see the work that I'm putting out. I think when we are so focused on a number and scaling to like a certain number of clients or a certain tier of income or revenue, I think that that starts to blind us a little bit to making sure we're taking on the right people and avoiding burnout. I think for me, my priority has been growing sustainably. So, because I'm a mom and because my life ebbs and flows like crazy, I want to make sure that I'm able to arrive to my business in a place where I feel like, okay, there's a lot on my plate, but it's manageable. I don't want to show up and be like, I can't handle any of this. When am I going to find the time to onboard this new client or finish this huge project? I want to give myself some buffer time because I know that there's going to be seasons in my life where right now it's summer break. I'm very lucky to have help from my parents and my in-laws, but my son comes, leaves the house late, comes home early, and I don't have the work day I used to have. So I want to make sure that my business is in a place where I can pay myself first, which I think is a thing we need a whole other conversation. Pay myself first, pay my the bills that need to be paid for the business, pay my contractors, and still feel like I have enough room to add on a client if I needed to or not, based on where I'm at in my season. In the fall, when my son goes back to school, I'm going to have more time to be able to focus on work. Do I want to focus on getting new clients or investing more in the clients I have now. That's a very long-winded way to say I'm not really focused on scaling. I'm focused on who makes the most sense to bring into my business as a contractor or as a client and what makes sense for my life right now.
Absolutely. And in a lot of ways, it empowers you and helps you stay in the game and keep from burning out. And let's talk about empowerment. What does empowerment look like for you in this particular season?
That's a great question. I think that for me, I'm a millennial, so I grew up in that hustle culture, work hard, play hard kind of thing. And I think what has changed for me is slowing down significantly. I am someone who thrives in the chaos, loves to be busy, loves to do it all. And I think what has been a challenge for me is that I feel like I'm always doing too much. And so I have really exercised the discipline, I guess, to one, say no to things. I'm a social butterfly. And so saying no to social events is hard for me. But I have found when my house feels clean and my workspace feels organized, my project management boards feel organized, I'm able to be both mom and wife and business owner in the same environment is empowering to me. I have the ability to not have to walk into an office every day. And so, what's empowering for me is to be able to go pick up my son from school early to go to lunch together, or we just built a garden in our backyard this year. So, going out and watering my plants and coming home and working on a project or doing a podcast like this. I think it's so empowering for me to see that we as women can do it all. It's just not ever going to happen all in the same day. And I think that changing my mindset a little bit and that I don't have to say yes to everything, sometimes saying no to bring some more peace to myself and to my life is more beneficial than feeling bad for saying no. And being able to live in these multiple worlds of being a wife and a mom and a business owner and a podcaster, slowing it down and just getting to the bare bones of why I'm doing it, who it's serving, how it's serving me, I think has been super empowering to know that I can do all of these different things. I'm never going to do them perfectly. I'm never going to do them all in one day. And being able to get good with that has been very empowering for me.
Absolutely. And Jessica, I have enjoyed having you here today. And sadly, we've come to the end of today's episode, but we always leave with a legacy here on About Her Business. And I'll give you a couple of minutes to think about this. When it's all said and done, what legacy do you want your work to leave behind?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think about this often because I think about my grandparents and my parents and people who are important to me and what kind of legacy we're all leaving behind for our kids and our grandkids and future generations. And I would just like to have the legacy of finding a place where I was able to be my best self, whether it was in work or as a mom, and thrive in an environment that I created on my own. I want my kids and my future grandkids to look back and be like, wow, she did it all, but did it on her own terms. And what made sense for her and went against the grain and felt successful from it. Maybe it's not monetary success, maybe it's not popping off on TikTok, but maybe it is just she was able to come to my kindergarten graduation and also host a podcast the same day or whatever it might look like. I would love for people to look back and be like, she did all the things that she wanted to do and made her feel good in a way that was sustainable.
I love that. And before we go, we're going to make sure to get all Jessica's information. Let us know where we can find the Mama Making Podcast. Let us know if you are taking any clients right now on the Collabs Creative. And if not, let us know when you are and let us know all your socials. Let us know all the details.
Yeah, so you can find the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. It's the Mama Making Podcast. Website is themamamakingpodcast.com. You can find us on all socials at the Mama Making Podcast. We have a new season coming up, season 5, and it is all about moms and women making impact. We have some incredible women coming on the podcast this season through the fall, talking about changing their communities, changing their lives in general, making a difference in advocacy and legislature, all the things. And then for Collabs Creative, you can find collabscreative.com, everywhere on socials at collabs.creative. And we are open for new clients this summer. So if you are looking for support for your small business, hit us up, Jessica at collabscreative.com.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you guys, I will be leaving all of that information down in the description box below. Any last words before we adjourn today's meeting, Jessica?
I think this has been an incredible conversation. If I had to leave you guys with anything, get out there and do the damn thing and do it in your way.
And ladies, with that, today's meeting is now adjourned. Thanks again to the host of the Mama Making Podcast and the founder of the Collabs Creative, Miss Jessica Lamb, for coming on and sharing her insights. And you be sure to subscribe to About Her Business wherever you receive your podcast so you never miss whenever we upload. Also, leave me some comments down in that comment section on which industry you think I should interview next. Until next time, keep your goals tight, those circles tighter, and those bank accounts growing.